Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am Kristen Boyce, a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice, Pathways to Healing Counseling. Through conversations, education, strategies, and shared stories, we will be closing the chapter on all the thoughts, feelings, people, and circumstances that don't serve you anymore and open the door to possibilities and the real you. You won't want to miss an episode, so be sure to subscribe. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. I am so glad you are here. You are on a growth journey. You came to the right place. And today's episode was a very special one. I thoroughly enjoyed my guest. As you can tell, she's done a lot of her own work. She is on this journey of really being at peace in the moment, accepting the moment as it is and surrendering. And we talk all about this. So if you're someone that lives in your head, you just cannot get out of your head. The thoughts just keep coming. They're looping. You are tired of thinking all the time and being in your head all the time, and you want to break the cycle. This episode is for you. It is all about how to break through the what if scenarios in your head, playing through every scenario, hyperanalyzing everything, not feeling at peace or at rest because the thoughts just keep on coming nonstop. This is the episode for you. Nancy Colier is a psychotherapist, interfaith minister, and the author of The Emotionally Exhausted Woman, Why You're Feeling Depleted and Now to Get What You Need, and also Can't Stop Thinking. And we really focused on can't stop thinking because I think it's plaguing so many of us, and we all need support in it. She's written many other books. She is a thought leader and a national speaker on women's empowerment, well-being, mindful technology, and has been featured on Good Morning America, the New York Times, and countless other media. She is a regular blogger for Psychology Today. Nancy has spent 25 years as a nationally top-ranked equestrian and serves as a performance consultant for professional athletes and artists. I thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with Nancy. It was kind of an instant connection because she was just grounded, vulnerable, and just had a spirit about her. So the interview was a lovely conversation, and I could have talked to her for a lot longer, and I wish I could have. So maybe there'll be a part 2 where I can bring her back on. I just really enjoyed our conversation. If you're on a growth journey, be sure to grab the healing guide at Kristen, Kristen, dboyce, boice.com/free resources. Let's share the podcast episodes that resonate with you with someone else that you want to have deeper conversations with. Maybe you and a friend or your partner, your spouse, your boyfriend or girlfriend or significant other struggle with looping thoughts. Maybe you're a parent or a grandparent that struggles with fear of something bad happening and you just feel plagued by it. This is the episode for you. Share it and then talk about it. Deconstruct what's happening for you, become more self-aware, and set in motion to really work on this and have deeper conversations with other people. This is my mission, to do life with more connected, vulnerable conversations. So I hope this one inspires you as much as it did me. Here is my conversation with Nancy Colier. Enjoy. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. This is such an important conversation. Do you overthink everything and you cannot stop thinking? Well, this is the episode for you. I am so delighted to introduce you to my guest, Nancy. Nancy, welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast.
Delighted to be here. And if you do overthink, it just means you're human, just means you're normal.
Thank you for saying that, because so many people and so many clients and listeners feel like they struggle with this and they cannot get out of their heads. They're like, I've tried the breathing and the meditation and I just cannot get out of it. How does this even start? What is this origin of overthinking?
Gosh, that's a great question to start. The origin of overthinking. Well, from the time we are born, really, we're taught that thinking is essentially the answer to all problems. If we think more about it, we'll find a solution. Our parents tell us, what were you thinking? Did you think about it? it's heralded as this phenomenal gift. And of course it is. I mean, that's what's so tricky about thinking, is that thinking is a thing we do. It's a little different than thoughts. Thoughts come down through our mind and we have a choice that is, shall I think that thought or shall I let it go? But we never learn that actually, because a thought appears, we don't have to think it. We can let it go. So the overthinking really comes from this deep, deep belief that our thoughts are true, and belief that somewhere in the thinking more about something, we're going to feel better. I mean, really at the bottom of it. So it becomes, though, a kind of addiction. When I first pitched my book, Can't Stop Thinking, to the publishers, I described it as an addiction. We can't stop. Just like we can't, I don't know, whatever your thing is, stop drinking, stop shopping, stop eating, whatever your thing is. We want to stop. We want to get out of these negative thought loops, and yet we can't stop. It's really no different than an addiction. The thing that's different about it maybe is that an addiction will eventually take you to rehab or cause you to lose your relationships, or something will not be doable. Thinking, we just keep thinking. It's how we roll as humans. So to be on our own side, it really means to say, oh, sweetheart, you think that by continuing to think about this, that you'll feel better. But it's a bit like, I don't know, trying to open a lock with a banana. It's just the wrong tool. If peace is what you want, very often more thinking and obsessing and ruminating and catastrophizing and thinking through all the things that can go wrong and then what you should do about them, it's not going to take you to peace. So it's a complicated answer to say we believe our thoughts, we're identified with them, we don't see them as separate from us, and we really believe that if a thought appears, we got to think about it.
Yeah, and it will keep us safe. I had someone tell me yesterday, we were having coffee, and she's like, when I get on a plane, I have to think of every scenario that could go wrong. It's to kind of keep her safe and protect her.
Well, this is
her thought,
paradox.
Right?
Yes, and that is the paradox. If I think through everything that can go wrong, somehow I'll be better prepared, right? But there does come, and listen, there's room for preparation, of course. But there also comes a time where we're rehearsing and rehearsing and rehearsing a potential what if that we've done enough. We know what we would do. And also, we have no idea who we'll be if that scenario were to come up. The only thing we really guarantee when we're doing that kind of what ifing is that we'll get to live the experience for sure once, maybe twice, but almost never does it come up as we've imagined it. But we're certainly going to get to live that catastrophe once, probably hundreds of times, imaginary world. But as you're saying insightfully, the real goal under that is I'll be safer. So we have to get much more curious about, hey, talking to yourself, have you run through this enough? Can you just go on probability? Can you insert probability? I have a client, and every time she takes a new medicine, she runs through, if I'm the 1 in 8 billion people who have the allergic reaction, I'll do these steps, let's go with probability. That 99.99 don't have that. And guess what? If you wait and see, I'll meet that challenge when it comes. Like when the plane is going down, I'll meet that challenge. But underneath all of our sort of rehearsing and rehearsing and rehearsing is some faulty idea that then we will be better prepared if it happens. Mm-hmm. Again, very, very faulty in that as soon as it's happening, we're not this person and all bets are off. So, okay to rehearse once, think it through, and then we have to get comfortable with what human beings cannot bear, which is uncertainty.
Yes.
Right? All of our thinking to some degree is an attempt to know what we cannot know. If I think about it enough, I'll feel safe. I'll know. I'll have a plan. 95% of life is the surrender of, I don't know. And that becomes, the more we work with our mind and work with thought and get better at unsticking from these loops, the more I don't know becomes a place that's comfortable because it's true, because it's really true.
It is. And the fear of people saying, well, the looping thoughts, I want to break it. I want to break it, but I'm afraid if I don't, something bad's going to happen.
Yeah.
So
that borders on OCD, right? And that's one of my specialties, where we really believe that we link stopping with some sort of worse thing happening. Again, broken brain. We have this idea that our brain is this incredibly fantastic instrument, and it is, but as a servant, not a master. So in the Buddhist tradition, they think of the mind as a sort of wild monkey who's drank a bottle of wine and been stung by a cave of bees, because it's also a broken out of order computer. So it links things that are not linked. It does all sorts of crazy. And one of the things that I teach people is to fall out of love with all your thoughts. Because you have a thought doesn't mean it's true. It doesn't mean that it is of value. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean anything necessarily. We have these intrusive random thoughts. I'm going to push this person in the train. I'm going to do this. And we think we have to unravel every single one. It's about our mother. It's about blah, blah, blah. We just have random intrusive thoughts. It's the way the heart pumps blood, the kidneys filter toxins, the mind throws out thoughts. We don't have to necessarily investigate them. So one of the things when we're looping and we have the same kind of loops going on, we want to stop, first of all, and recognize we're in a loop. We want to put our hand on our own heart and say, this is really hard to be flooded with thoughts. So first, just by acknowledging that we're caught, we're bringing in a new kind of energy, which is the person who's being chatted at. Because we're not the chatter. We're not the one yammering in our head. We're actually the one having to listen to it. So the moment we acknowledge, oh, goodness, wow, I'm caught, something shifts and there's an us and then a flood of thoughts. They're two separate things right there. We've disidentified. We're not the thoughts anymore, the yammerer. We're the one being flooded with them. And then we have to ask ourselves, so what's the real feeling here, right? If I could solve this problem, then I would feel what? If I got this sort of diamond in the rubble that I'm looking for with all this thinking, oh, I could feel safe, or I could feel the world is not so scary, or I could feel whatever. Find the thing. If I could get the script right that I'm going to say to my husband this time, then he'd hear me. He'd get how he hurt me. Whatever, what's the thing that all the thinking is really trying to get to? And then we've already moved our attention off of solving, going through the loop to what's the suffering that the thinking is trying to heal. Now we're in a different conversation. And that suddenly something just sort of settles down because it's like, oh, that's what all this thinking is really designed to, if I come up with just the right plan, then I won't have to feel afraid. But honey, you're afraid. You're afraid. Or, well, then if I come up with, again, the scripting, I'll say it that way. Or if I had said it that way, oh, then you would deserve empathy for what you're describing. Find the kernel, because that pulls us right out of the thought loop.
That's so helpful. Let's take this plane scenario.
Okay.
Friend with the plane.
Yep.
Let's put it into practical use. So she's going through every scenario in her head. She's looking at every passenger. She's coming up with a plan. Who's her ally? Who's she had this whole thing, right? This is what looping thoughts do. She had every detail accounted for. How would you help her break this looping cycle?
So I'm not going to assume that's you.
It's not me. It's my friend. I'm not afraid to fly, but let's just say it's my friend. It is my friend.
Yeah. So first I want her to sit down on the plane and just start with a few deep breaths. to connect to her body. Because one thing when we're looping is we're caught above the neck or up here. All the energy is up here. We got to get the body involved because the body is where peace resides, doesn't reside in the mind. The mind is a place of panic and so on. So drop in, put your hand on your belly, put your hand on your heart. I want you to just pause for a second. We'll come back to the thoughts. I promise you. I promise they'll be there. And just take a few deep breaths so you feel grounded on the earth. Then I want you to also just acknowledge how much you're caught right in this moment, how you're in that panicky place. You're in that checking where the exits are, checking who's got bombs. You're in the state. So first, I want you to just feel a moment of compassion, self-compassion for what this moment feels like, and to have to be going through all these rituals to feel whatever it allows you to feel. And then let's ask ourselves, I'm joining her. Have I gone through this enough with enough other flights that I have a sense of sort of everything that's to come, all the scenarios I'm going to run through? Have I done this before? And maybe even have I done this enough? Just a reality check. Can I step away from the thoughts for long enough to just acknowledge, haven't I done this before? Then I'm going to ask myself from there, what am I really afraid? What am I really afraid of? I'm afraid of what if I can't control this? What if every time I do go up into the sky, 35,000 feet in the air in someone else's hands, that I am out of control? What if that's true? And what if I love this life and don't want to lose this life? And what if I don't want to lose all the people that I love?
Yeah, my kids are going to be without a parent. That was one of her fears.
Name it. Yeah. And I'm afraid of that. And can I allow myself to just acknowledge that that's true? That I get it. I hear you, mind, that you're trying to control what is not in my control. And it feels like going through all this. So we're having this whole conversation of love in our mind. It is scary. It is scary to go up. I'm her. For me, it's scary to surrender control. And yet all these run-throughs and check, they really don't give you any more control. But I get it because it's scary and you don't want to lose that. So are you willing, mind, just for now, just for this moment, to go with probability? That's all I'm asking. That until you learn otherwise, are you willing to just roll with the 99% land safely, 99.999? So can you join me there? We cannot leave out the kindness for self of, it's scary for you to surrender control. And it's an illusion that all of this looping gives it. So I would go through that each time, but self-compassion being, I don't like being out of control. I don't want to do this. And then can I accept probability? Have you been okay all the times? And I get it. Then people who are very afraid of flying will say, but every time you go up in the air, it's just that plane. Okay. And have you done this before? And you were okay. Remind of what's happened before. So you hear there's a kind of wise elder in you says, I get it. I get it. And you want to bring that elder to sit down next to you to say, it's okay. And you can be safe in this moment. Are you safe? So we bring in the present moment as well. Feel your body again on the floor. Feel your feet. Get embodied.
Yes.
The more you go up into the head, the more frightened you get. So come back down right now. Do you feel safe? Are you safe? You feel your body, you feel it in the chair. Take some deep breaths, right? You're okay in this moment. That's as far as I'm going to ask you to travel right now, here, now. So it looks something like that.
Yeah, that's very helpful. I think the key piece you're saying when we have looping thoughts, and this is, see if I'm getting it, okay, is you're accepting the uncertainty in each moment. there is an acceptance, that protector part of you that says, but I need this to keep safe, or I need this to have control, or I need this to know the outcome. You're literally surrendering in a kind of accepting this truth that each moment is uncertain.
That's
Is that
exactly it. And when
it?
you get to that place and you can say, I am okay with not knowing. And am I okay now? This becomes our mantra. Right now, am I okay? And I have to accept, if I'm going to be a human being on this human journey, that I can't know. I can't know so much. Thinking is really an attempt to know what we can't know, this giant mystery. We're rolling around on a planet. They tell us about what's going on, but it's unfathomable what's happening, unfathomable to be incarnated. And so we create all these categories, patterns, ways of understanding, narratives. We have a whole system which gives us a sense of structure and order, which we need as human beings. But underneath all of it is, right, sweetheart, you can't know for sure, and
Accepting that. It's really a rumble, because I feel like thinking really tries to predict the future for that certainty. Like if I could just predict that I'm going to get on this plane and it's going to land safely, I'm okay. So we try to predict safety outcomes.
Right?
We want safety outcomes.
Yeah, of course, because you don't say to a young child, we just don't know. We never say that. We say, it's going to be fine. That's what our thoughts are always trying to do, which is, it's going to be fine. You're going to be safe. There's all sorts of narratives we create to say it's going to be okay. And when you start unraveling them, you realize it's because of what you're saying, which is this essential discomfort with the unknown. So we give ourselves, it's not to just throw ourselves right in with the gladiators and say, well, you can't know. It's to say, okay, so 99 out of 100 times this happens. Let's go with that. But all this looping is really a way to get it signed, sealed, and delivered so we can bear the uncertainty. Another thing I like to bring in with people afraid of flying is, so we want to get to this place. Let's say we're going to, I don't know, Punta Cana to lay on the, by the water. We also can say to ourselves, and I find this very helpful in any scenario, in order to get to have that experience, we have to have this. So again, we're not hiding from the truth. It's like we have to live in a certain amount, 4 hours of unknown in order to have that we want. So we link what we're doing, or we're going to see a dear friend, right? Hopefully we're not going to a funeral or something else but we try to put it in a context, which is, this is tolerable because, again, we're not hiding from the fact that it's hard.
Yeah. Okay. So let's take this concept of embracing the uncertainty, because this is the journey I've been on. This is my lifelong journey. I feel like of just embracing the moment as it is, unattaching to the outcome, let the flow of life happen. And when there is fear, I find the looping can start. Like you said at the beginning of our conversation, the fear can take us into the looping. Would that be the origins, do you think, of the start of it?
Well, you're using yourself, so I'll ask you there.
Yes.
Can you give me an example?
So mainly with my kids. It'll be like, oh, we want to protect them from any hurt. We can't. This is an illusion. Any hurt, shame, something bad happening, rejection. Like we want to protect them. And so I want to be like, I want to know the outcomes, that they're going to be okay. Right?
Yes. So, okay. I'm going to give you a moment of counsel, because I write a lot about parenting. So what if you were to shift your perspective from, my job on earth is to control the results, control the contents of life, and rather we put our focus on, I'm here, present and available and loving and on your side when life gives you lifeness.
Oh, yes.
Life shows up on life's terms. My job is not to control that. That part I can't. And yet what I can 100% control is I've got you when that happens.
Yes. Yes. And that's how I've said to my kids. I said, I am available to hold space for you, to listen, to process, to be with you, whatever you may need in that moment, or just to sit with you. Because I think that is what we wanted as
Exactly.
kids. If we
Exactly.
really dive into our own stuff, that is what we wanted. We didn't want someone to fix, rescue, or try to save us. That didn't feel good.
And it also
Or
doesn't work.
control us. It doesn't work. It doesn't, that's not what we needed. And so there's so much with looping thoughts that are epidemic, I feel like right now. There's so many
With the
people.
fear going on.
Yes. And it's controlling our lives. What you were going to say something.
I was going to say there too, that when we're doing that, particularly with our children, I say this to my husband all the time, which is when you get in there and control, you're also not respecting to some degree. They need to have that happen.
Mm-hmm.
The thing you think you're keeping them from, they need to walk through that so they can get it. So when we think that we're masters of the universe and we're just going to dole out the kind of experiences our kids get to have, we're actually depriving them of the human experience.
Yeah, because it's an illusion. We can't. That's the whole thing of surrender. This is the whole conversation of surrender. And
right now.
Hey, yes, this idea that we have any control. I just think it's a sham. I mean,
right. But the thing is, we do have control over how we behave in this moment.
Yes, we have a choice.
Right?
Would you say a choice or
100%? I mean, we have, once we start to unlock our self-story and our narratives and the things we're reenacting but in this moment, what can I control? Right? It's sort of the serenity prayer. I mean, right? God grant me the serenity, accept the things I can control, the courage to change the things whatever it is. I always forget it. And the wisdom to know the difference. But to some degree, we have to ask ourselves that, can you really control that? No. So what can I control? I can control how I show up for my kids. 100% I can. And I can control also what kind of environment I'm creating in the home. I have say over that. Once they walk out into the world and they have boyfriends and girlfriends and teachers and camps and this and that, I'm out. But I gotcha if something goes off. And in this world right now, where between politics and climate change and global situations, and there's so much frightening stuff and so much we're being flooded with that is not in our control. We can only come back to this present moment. What can I do right here to bring light into what feels like a lot of darkness? That's all I got. And I have to get more comfortable again every day with, I don't know. And listen, maybe we write the disastrous outcome. There's an old survival technique. You focus on the stick, not the carrot, because they know evolutionarily, if we focus on the negative thing that's coming down the pike, the stick that's going to hit us, we're more likely to survive than chasing the carrot that we want. So our whole survival evolution is based on focus on the thing that could go wrong. That's a better bet in surviving. But to some degree, what we can remind ourselves of is, okay, so that may be true, but let's just come back to here. All we can manage is this. That's it.
And to tolerate that, to come back in this present moment, right? Like some people, it's hard to tolerate the present moment.
Well,
you find that?
I mentioned how you're learning to surrender to the present moment. That's the biggest, is that we're always in a fight with reality. And you fight with reality, reality wins, as far as I know, 100% of the time. Never going to win the battle. So much of getting a better sense of peace is, what if I were to stop fighting with this moment the way it is? What if I were to stop trying to make it different? Just that.
Yes.
Can I allow it to be what it is? And then some inner part of you jumps up and says, I can't possibly allow that because that would mean that, and that, and that, and that. That would mean if someone has died, if I stop fighting with it, that I'm okay with that. It doesn't. they've already died. Or if I'm trying to unravel the conversation I had that I didn't like, that means that somehow I'm giving up on the relationship change. No, it just means that this moment is like, so you have to unravel what is getting okay with the fact of reality as it is in this moment. What's the real fear? If I let that person have that truth and I just let that be what is, does that mean that my truth is wrong? What's the thing that I can't bear that comes with giving up the fight with what is right now? Just this moment, can I get okay with how it is? Under all spiritual practice is that. Give up the resistance to this moment. All the thinking we're talking about that's trying to control and trying to get some knowing in all this unknown is really trying to fight with what is.
Yes. It is the truth. This is, if everyone can take this in, you're speaking so much wisdom on what truth is. I can tell you've done so much work of your own around this.
40 years of spiritual practice.
I can tell. What's been the most helpful to you personally?
Well, what we're talking about now, can I just surrender to this? Whatever it is, restlessness, irritation, whatever feelings are arising, as a therapist and an author and all these things, I'm not afraid of what's arising. So can I just let it be? Right? It doesn't define me, doesn't make me this kind of person. It's a sort of wearing the arisings less tightly. So, okay, bring that, right? You feel irritable right now. Okay, let it be. There's a sort of kindness to the arisings within ourselves and less attachment to that says this about me. And then that means that about that person and so on and so on. And all the links and the mind and
Analyzing.
Yes. And again, in my bones, I know that if I want peace, it is not going to come by going down another rabbit hole. I know that. I've suffered there enough. I have replayed and rehearsed and done, and I talk about it in the book, all these scenarios and the conversations and what's wrong with that person and if I could fix them and this is happening. And it doesn't give you the thing. What gives you that is, hey, sweetheart, stop. Stop trying to make it different than it is. This moment. How's this moment? And what's fascinating is when you let it go, it goes. Because remember, the whole scenario you're living in your head, no one else is living that. When you let it go, it's like magic. It goes poof. It doesn't exist as a concrete thing somewhere in the world where that person, oh, well, now they know I'm letting it go. It's all imaginary. The whole game, you're playing you're in a movie. We're all in movies in our head, imagining someone else is in the movie. There's no one else in the movie. It's part of what's freed me is a kind of humor about it. It's just a movie. And then we assign intentions to other people. We assign all sorts of things because we think the movie's real. And this phenomenal thing happens when you're in relationship and you can say, wow, this is true for me. What's true for you? The sky opens and then coexisting truths because it's just what through your conditioning, through your traumas, through your whatever, fill in the blank. This is what the perception looks like. I don't assume anyone has that perception. That starts to be a different kind of freedom than sort of micromanaging the moment to make it look the way we want it to look.
Yes. This is so beautiful. I love this conversation. It's so meaningful to me on so many levels. What books have been the most transformative in your life? Like if you could think of a book or two, what would be those that really spoke to your soul, spirit? What comes through for you?
That's a good question. I read so much.
Yes, I love books. And it's hard to pick one. Just maybe one that's coming to mind, perhaps.
Well, one that pops in my mind are the poems of Mary Oliver.
I love Mary Oliver.
That Your One Wild and Precious Life. I talk about that in The Emotionally Exhausted Woman, but I think to some degree I love Adyashanti. Adyashanti writes about, in all of his books, he writes about just what we're talking about, or the power of now. I mean, basic, but wow, does that just nail it? A lot of Pema Chodron's books and something as simple as the perennial philosophy, about all religions lead to this primary experience of being the awareness within which this human appeared and the love that we feel for this human and all her thoughts and all that, but not identify with that human.
Yes.
Right. So it's not to say we're not that human, the embodied us that goes around and has preferences and has experiences, but that there's something underneath all of that which holds that loving space, that sort of sense of that. I love Stephen Beaudion's work. Beyond Mindfulness is a phenomenal book. He wrote the preface for one of my books. But all these authors who talk about who we really are, essentially, and that who we really are has great love for this human who struggles for control.
I think one of the most important things that I share with you is this compassionate voice in my head, very nurturing. When I need it the most, it's a soft, tender, loving, precious voice that comes through. It's the wise self, the elder self, you use those words, comes through and just is very calming. It's like, it's okay. It's okay to feel what you feel. Like it's a permission giving, loving, accepting, and then it moves up and out. It's like it moves through me, rather than me looping on that thought, it moves up and out, and then I can settle. Yeah.
And a lot of people, you're lucky and you've done the work, I can tell, to build that voice. But a lot of times when people land in my office, it's because they didn't have that parent. They don't have that, literally don't have that it's going to be okay, sweetheart voice in them. So in that work, very often I will be that for a while until they can internalize. And for some, they'll come back 20 years later and say, I still hear you saying,
Yes.
Let's bring in the sadness, or let's bring in the rage. Bring it in. I love it. Let's hear from it. We attach so much meaning to these experiences we have and these feelings we have, like they're defining, and then there's shame, and then there's all this stuff. It's just like part of the human, right? And then it will go if it gets its time. And when it's not being asked to go away, women particularly, you're allowed to feel enraged. Go for it. Bring it. Right. And then it moves.
Mm-hmm.
But we make all these categories about what's allowed and then what makes us, and then fill in the blank. That makes us difficult. That makes us bitch. That makes us selfish. Does it? It's just a part of so much of the work as we heal and as we find peace is about welcoming the whole catastrophe, the whole enchilada, the whole miracle and catastrophe that we are, all of it. And not saying you're welcome and you're not. Because the more unwelcome an experience or a feeling is, the more it'll bang the door down. So,
yes.
You get more comfortable with, and this too.
You're articulating this so beautifully. I love it so much. Is there anything we didn't cover that you feel like would be important for the listeners?
Just reminding yourself, if there's one thing you take away, it's that voice of, hey, if I go down this rabbit hole again, if I do this thing I'm about to do, dive in, loop, whatever my loop is, right? I will suffer. Am I willing to try something different? Am I willing to step away from the whole content? Seems so frightening because the mind is saying, you've got to go, you got to go, you got to work through it. You got to figure out the answer. If I know I'll suffer, I'm just trying it on as an experiment. Am I willing to step away from the contents and then drop in, stop and drop, and take a few deep breaths and just rejoin my body and rejoin the present moment, feel my feet on the floor, feel my hands from the inside. Am I willing? Let me see. Just as an experiment, I can always go back to looping. So I want your listeners to understand, if I go down that rabbit hole again, I will suffer. And this loving voice that says, I know, sweetheart, you're trying to create control and knowing and certainty in the uncertainty. And it's opening a lock with a banana. It's the wrong tool. Acknowledging the need for it And then we're not even at, can we accept that there's a lot of unknown? We're just with that it's just not going to take you there.
It's not going to unlock the peace you're hoping it will unlock and the comfort.
No, but we get it. That's the tool we've been taught since the time we were conscious. And paradoxically, this is what's so exciting. As soon as we step away and we let go, guess what rises up? The peace. The peace, the thing that we're never taught is the peace is in the surrender.
Yes.
Peace is in the saying, there's a lot of uncertainty and I'm okay in this moment. That's where the peace sits, in the very place we are taught not to look, in the letting go of control.
So if someone says, this is kind of an addiction for me, you mentioned that at the beginning, we have support groups for every other thing. You need Alcoholics Anonymous. You need SAA for sex addiction. Shopping addiction. We've got eating this OA. Where can someone go that's like, I need support?
Well, they can always reach out to me. I still do see some people individually for this kind of work. Mindfulness, meditation is the beginning. If you can find yourself a place that does mindfulness meditation, it is designed to start reading about mindfulness. It's a terrible name because it's actually mindlessness, but our mind moving, looking.
I wish they would have named it that.
I know, right?
Seriously, you're the first person to ever say that. And I'm like, yes.
Yes, it's so faultily named because what we learn is to disidentify from all that's happening in the mind. So it's not, again, in self-help and all of these different paths we take, the idea people walk away with is I've got to either change my thoughts, make them good, say the affirmations. I feel like things are falling apart. Well, say it's going to be okay. It's like putting a hat on dirty hair. It doesn't work. They're lovely for a minute, but when the going gets tough, those things fall apart because they're not in our deepest bones. So we have this idea it's either to change the thoughts from negative to positive or to make the monkey mind stop producing thoughts. Neither are going to ever happen. Neither, not to stick. So what it really, freedom is from this addiction is about being able to watch the thought and listen. Some are easy. What's for dinner? What movie we're going to see might be pretty easy. But when we get into the nitty gritty, my mom did this, or my husband is doing that, or, oh my God, there's going to be a hole in the ozone. They're a little harder to just sort of put over there, but that we can wear our thoughts again more loosely. So there's an us and then thought, and there's a safe shore from which to watch them with compassion, with, wow, look at that. Look at that. So freedom is, I would say, somebody start to look, bring the lens at your own mind just throughout the day. Drop in. What is my mind talking to me about? What are my thoughts saying to me? What is the ticker tape coming down the pike here at me? Start to actually, even just that move itself is the beginning of saying, I'm not my thoughts. Step one, we've got to do that. Bringing compassion to what they're trying to make happen. But first, gotta unstick from them. So meditation is a great place to start. Just basic meditation. That's all. Thought comes, I'm going to see if I can just see it and let it go. Not jump on the train that it's off.
Yes. Thank you so much, Nancy. If people are like, I love Nancy, where can they find you? If they want more of Nancy and your work and your books, and I'll link all your books in the show notes and then in the newsletter.
So my website has all my information. I give workshops all over the place, and it's nancycolier.com, and there's one out in my name. I write a blog for Psychology Today, and I'm on Substack, and it's What If on Substack, which is exactly about what we're talking about. And the two most recent books, the Can't Stop Thinking book and the Emotionally Exhausted Woman. One reason that we are so exhausted being that we never really get peace because we just keep looping and looping and looping and never take a vacation. And then we go on vacation and we realize, oh my God, my mind is still there. Darn it. But so nancycolier.com.
Oh, Nancy, I could talk to you for hours. This has been so enlightening and connective. And I'm just so grateful for the work you're doing in the world. Thank you so much. Truly appreciate you and your time and your heart. So thank you for being here. Thank you so much for listening to the Close the Chapter podcast. My hope is that you took home some actionable steps along with motivation, inspiration, and hope for making sustainable change in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, click the subscribe button to be sure to get the updated episodes every week and share with a friend or a family member. For more information about how to get connected, visit Kristen, KRISTEN, Boyce, BOICE.com. Thanks and have a great day.